What's going on, everybody? Welcome back. Today we're going to be comparing the Hisense U7G versus the TCL R646. Now this is going to be post calibration, so this is not going to be a normal comparison. We did the out of the box comparison. I know a lot of people love the out of the box results to know what they can take home, but now today we're going to be showing you guys when you actually try to optimize these displays, which one goes further beyond the other one, right? So again, if you're here to hear an echo chamber, or you're here to see which one of your options that you maybe are championing for is going to win, that's not what this is. This is an honest, real-time review showing both TVs side by side with no tricks or gimmicks post calibration. If you like this kind of thing, smack a like on this video and subscribe, because we're getting to the point right now. Okay, so without wasting any of your time, the Hisense U7G edges out the TCL R646 in color and in some cases depth, but the color is very, very dramatic. The TCL R646 beats the Hisense with clarity and with peak highlights and some black levels from time to time, so it really just depends on the scene. I will be illustrating that even further, but I wanted to get that out of the way for those of you who may be a little short on time, because this might be a little bit more in depth. Okay, so we're going to talk about this image on the screen right now. It's an image from Naruto. It's just a wallpaper, but you can see a lot from static images like this. The biggest thing is you can notice the difference in the color yellow. Now on the camera, it's probably going to look way out of whack. Cameras tend to juice things up, so please just listen to what I'm saying and try to draw something valuable from it. The yellow is more reddish in nature on the Hisense, giving it a more accurate look versus the almost like neon green that I would see. It's like a neon greenish hint or rather a hue to the yellow that I'm seeing to the right on the TCL R646. So that's one of the big things that you're going to notice is going to be a problem, and calibration is not going to fix that, because again, post calibration, there's always this green hue on the TCL that you can't get out. And I mean, it's going to sound really mean, but I feel like it's almost like a pissy kind of hint of green hue to it that you really can't get out. Now, it might sound mean, but I'm telling you, man, like, it's there. And to be very clear, the kind of calibration I had to do was not normal at all. Even after reference accurate numbers were achieved, this still exhibited that same kind of like pissy hint of green to it. It was really bad, and I think that that's something a lot of you guys are going to be bothered by, at least if you're looking for reference accuracy. Not to say that it can't get there, but it's definitely noticeable. You're going to notice in things like landscapes, you're not going to have the same level of quality as you are on the Hisense, with the color just punch and draw you in. And again, the Hisense is capable of creating depth and immersion every bit as much as the TCL. It's the clarity part that goes lacking. So that's one of those things that you have to kind of keep in mind. Images like this kind of draw home what I'm saying a lot more when you look at just the detail coming off of the Hisense. The mountains are deeper in black tonality. You're going to have the sky painted in a more realistic form of cyan, where everything on TCL is a bit more muted by comparison. And again, they're rocking like optimized settings, and neither one are being nerfed. It's just because Hisense adopts what's called an HSL, hue, saturation, and luminance way of adjusting color, you can dial them in down to like the absolute like perfection almost of what you're looking for out of a color, what you know is accurate, versus TCL's RGB mixer slider approach, where you literally have to introduce red, green, and blue into signal of yellow and try to adjust it that way. It's the dumbest thing ever. It's stupid. It was stupid when Samsung does it, and it's stupid here. TCL had it right last year because they didn't used to do it like this, at least if I'm remembering the R645 correctly, and now this is like something that feels very new, and it feels really bad. Now, again, when we look at images like this, it's not to say TCL isn't delivering. I find more clarity in images like this. So if you're watching something with like spacey kind of outer space, kind of interstellar kind of scenes, right? You're gonna like be immersed a lot more on the TCL with these kinds of scenes, because the clarity is like you can shoot right through and just see right through all of those clouds, and it's incredible. Hisense though is giving you ambient light though, which TCL is just omitting entirely. The blue glow from the moon and from the space and from like the whole light, like everything, all those subtle colors are picked up on Hisense. And that kind of plays a role in even dynamic range photos like this when you see the sky, right? So you're going to see every little shade of blue, purple, magenta, like everything in the city, like all the lights, everything, and the hues represent themselves perfectly, basically, where on TCL, you're missing a good amount of the shades of blue in the upper echelon of where the color sits, right up in here somewhere, and it's really just not ideal for that to happen. Now, to be fair, both images look good. I think people will be happy with either one, but when we're talking about which one is edging the other one out, Hisense, image after image that I've thrown up, has been stronger across the board when you're talking about color quality. Now, another thing I kind of wanted to point out that like kind of has me in my feels a little bit, TCL is more expensive this year. They used to be $699 for their 6 series. Now they're basically $950 to $1,000. And I think honestly, it's not worth that kind of money because you're still getting around the $500 tier of image quality when you're talking about some of the issues that you're running into. Now, to be fair, the clarity again on images like this, absolutely incredible. You will not see these details. I highly doubt you will. If you do, awesome. But essentially, when you look at this image on the ground, you're going to notice that there are little lights that you can see, and on the TCL you can see each individual light. Hisense, those lights are a little bit more blurry. So this is what I'm talking about when I say clarity. You can also see the rock texture way clearer on the TCL than you can on the Hisense. After a while, this kind of stuff is going to add up into real world content, whether you're watching sports, movies, or TV shows, and you're really going to start to feel it. However, it's weird because when you get to scenes like this, then something weird happens where Hisense keeps up pretty identically with the TCL for most of the foliage. However, it kind of falls off when you get to like the foliage on this side here. All of this is just clearer on the TCL. But the color on the Hisense and the ambient light from that scene, way more realistic. If we look over here in the middle, you're gonna see like it just looks so much better on the Hisense. And I think that's gonna be one of those things that you're gonna notice and be like, whoa, like what kind of TV am I watching right now? Because it just hits so hard. And again, when you look at water scenes like this, it's just a win for the Hisense because now this is where their algorithm is slaying TCL. Because TCL is trying to over dramatize the effect of sharpening, and they lead to a lot of over sharpening in a lot of situations. And every little thing I see over here has just kind of like this over sharpened look. It's not over sharpened, so to speak, but it is exhibiting an over sharpened look because they're trying to, I guess, give you like a simulated pixel level illuminated look. But in doing that, they're just creating over sharpening because it's not actually pixel level illumination. For most people, this won't be a problem, I suppose, but for me, it is because I would rather you blur out some of those pixels to control the noise in the scene. But that's just a person-to-person kind of thing there. What I will say is both TVs are doing a great job in this particular scene. You get to this rainforest scene, I find that the Hisense looks nice and everything, but this is where the difference kind of slides off. So with the color green, I'm noticing Hisense is looking a lot more cartoony, a lot more like neon, so their quantum dots are a bit too strong in this particular area. It's not exactly as accurate as it could be versus the TCL where you're just getting that really like dialed in kind of each individual shade of green. So it's not like TCL's not hitting back with Hisense and offering something comparable. Not at all. They're both kind of comparable and identical. You just have to really be willing to pixel peep, I suppose, to pick out these differences. But then it immediately shifts when you go to scenes like this and all the green that you can see in the scene kind of shift and go towards Hisense. So I feel like when they have scenes like this, where it's primarily a green scene, Hisense is trying algorithmically to give you the most saturated, most punchy, most beautiful green they can give you, but that in turn kind of hurts the accuracy of the image, and especially compared to the TCL that we're seeing over here just a little bit. So it's something that you're going to have to kind of keep in mind and kind of be aware of as you're buying these TVs, depending on what you need them for. And again, either way you go, both TVs are incredibly strong, but like for this image, the depth, the clarity, all of it is rocking out harder on the Hisense, at least on my end in person. No idea what YouTube's gonna show you as a final product, but what I'm seeing is absolutely just incredible, game-changing stuff. And again, a similar situation kind of happens here. So it's kind of like when silhouetted scenes or darker scenes get on the screen, Hisense keeps up very well with the TCL. And now it becomes kind of like a question of which one would you actually buy. Personally, for me, I would buy the Hisense. The menu is just easier to use. It is better to operate because it's not as congested. And it's able to give you extraordinarily deep blacks, and actually deeper blacks than the TCL in moments like this. On this particular image, I'm noticing that the Hisense is just way darker all around in areas where it's supposed to be. Now, keep in mind, it's not a mini LED television and it's not advertising that. However, I'm getting the benefit of the same level of deep black. So I think that's something that you guys really want to know, especially when you look at the clarity part. The clarity is literally identical and actually greater than the TCL. Now, this is something you really got to be nitpicking to see, but we're doing it anyway. The reflections on the water right around this area are clearer than they are on the TCL, where they appear blurry by comparison. So these are little things that you are going to note. Now, the light spread and the overall tightness of the light sources coming in and reflecting down into straight beams of light are sharper than they are on the Hisense, but at the same time, they're both very, very comparable TVs, like going blow for blow. But again, like I was saying, if I had to choose one, my money on the line, me personally, I would go with the Hisense because it just is the better looking TV. And the TCL is a little prone to black crush in a lot more scenes than I would want it to be. And I think that's going to hold it back from being really good. But you can really see what I'm talking about when I say the difference in color on this particular image. I mean, just look at the buildings. I really don't have to point to anything. I'm pretty sure you can kind of see like a difference between like Hisense's representation of colors like green and, you know, the sky in general being just a richer color. And that's really like the word I would use to describe Hisense. It's just a richer picture. And I think that's ultimately what's going to be really valuable for a lot of people. So I kind of wanted to round this video out by just showing you a bunch of images. And again, getting to dark images like this, I mean, there is virtually no real tangible difference outside of clarity when you talk about the mini LED technology, because full array is keeping up really well. No blooming, no light leaking, no edge bleeding, no clouding, like none of it. It's wonderful on the Hisense U7G. And again, it may sound like shilling or upselling, but really this year Hisense is delivering a better image than pretty much every single LED producer right now when we're talking about what is important in an image. Now, this image is always really hard to see, but essentially the TCL is giving you the deeper blacks. You have more shadow detail. It's optimizing this scene really, really well. I don't know how well you can see it, so I'll open up my ISO here. But I mean, they're really identical, but the color on the Hisense to the left is just really bang on stuff. So again, not to really draw out the same kind of concept, I'll lower down the ISO again. I'm going to show you guys like one final image that I really like using to kind of see these kinds of things. And it's this particular image so I can see the difference in like what's being rendered in the foreground and the background and facially, because there's a lot of grits and grains to the character's beard, or rather 5 o'clock shadow. And I can tell you, TCL is doing an amazing job with the fine detail. I see every little pore in his face, where on Hisense, that stuff is getting blurred out and you wouldn't even know he has a 5 o'clock shadow, and you wouldn't know he had that many pores designed in the original game. That's the difference here. So if you're somebody who's a stickler for detail, you might want to go with the TCL, because detail and clarity and even like the tightness on highlights are going to be better. It even can get a little brighter. However, it does lead to some over brightening in some scenes. It also does tend to go wrong on the algorithmic side sometimes and black crush depending on what you're watching. It is incredibly difficult to calibrate, so that is something you are going to have to think about. Hisense was way easier to get in and dial in the settings than this TCL. TCL's menu is way too fiddly, and you're just going to find yourself rolling back and forth through a bunch of options. It's quite convoluted, and they kind of need to revisit their approach. Hisense, on the other hand, it's pretty blurry by comparison to the TCL, so they need to revisit their approach with algorithmically creating sharpness and clarity. That is their biggest weakness right now, and motion, in my personal opinion, compared to the TCL, is slightly worse. Not a whole bunch worse, but definitely slightly worse. I feel like TCL did a little bit better this year than Hisense with motion. However, when you look at the color and you look at the depth that it creates and the option, the user interface, and honestly speaking, the price point, the design, the build quality, and the features, and the hands-free voice control with the toggle switch, I feel like Hisense is offering something that's also like a really game-changing thing. So it really depends on you based on your experience and what you look for, but I honestly feel like if you're talking about picture quality, which is what we're assessing here today, that is going to be the big thing for you guys. Now, as far as VRR and gaming features and all that stuff, I'll let you know how the TCL does in a separate video, and the same for the Hisense. But right now, if we're talking about picture quality alone, I would have to say, for me personally, I would give the win to the Hisense U7G for color, but again, clarity for TCL. That being said, I want to hear what you guys have to say in the comment section down below. Thank you guys so much for watching the #1 brand in honesty, and until the next video, I'll see you guys later.